All right, so Jordan Peterson has some gems, and I just want to watch them and analyze them, think about them. So let's start. Let's watch some of his gems and go through it.
There's hardly anything more perfect than the ability to climb to the top of whatever dominance hierarchy you happen to be put in. Now, one of the things I would say is that women exerted tremendous selection pressure on men to be exactly that sort of creature. But what the hell else would women select men for? If they had any sense. You know, you want to select a partner, because you know, you've heard the idea of hypergamy, right? Women mate across or up dominance hierarchies. I think that women pick men for their ability to climb the status hierarchy, because we forced women in an experiment that we never published to choose between those two things, wealth versus ability. The women overwhelmingly chose ability. They just use wealth as a marker of ability.
There seems to be an employment issue too, and I mean that's a complicated problem because you know, the employment market for people who are less skilled has been, I would say, in decline, especially on the male end of the distribution. And one of the stats that Farrell cites is that 3/4 of women will not consider seriously dating an unemployed man, whereas 1/3 of men would have a problem dating an unemployed woman. So there's obviously a gender bias there, and I think there's a reason for that. I think that it's grounded in both rationality and evolutionary biology. The evolutionary biology element is that women across cultures tend to mate across and up hierarchies, let's say. And the reason for that, I think, is that they're logically, and this is where the logic comes in as well as the biology, they're looking for a partner that can be of substantial economic utility, practical utility, when they put themselves in the vulnerable position of having a child. So then you also have this additional problem is if the employment situation tanks in any serious way, then men become less desirable as partners. And your claim, I guess, in part is that by filling that void, the government actually contributes to the problem rather than addressing it.
I think this is such an interesting conversation and interesting thing because when you watch a lot of red pill channels, they have this sort of like hatred towards women for being hypergamous. But before I get into that, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. It really pushes this video out in the algorithm and encourages me to make more videos. This video is brought to you by Brand Video Pro. We help brands and influencers scale their influence and sales. So if that is of interest to you, head on over to our website, click the link down below, and find out how we can help you. When you watch a lot of red pill channels, they have this sort of like hatred towards women for being hypergamous. And based on just like information and education. Yeah, so he's a clinical psychologist, very researched, very in-depth. And so this reason for women being selective, he really breaks it down. And I think it just offers some like information to a lot of men that watch these red pill channels and they sort of believe this idea that women are hypergamous for no reason because they're greedy or whatever they think. But when you actually think about it, it takes $1 million to raise a child until the age of 18. It probably is more now. That's a lot of money. So you want to be with somebody that can support in that way. Let's keep watching.
Who run things are sitting at home smoking big cigars and like telling their minions what to do. It's like that's like the 1920s millionaire that's on the cover of the Monopoly game. That's no sociological analysis. I know lots of people like that, and they work all the time, from the second they wake up till the second they go to sleep. And they don't just casually work. So these people who are running things, there's corrupt people obviously, but the vast majority of them first are self-made and second, they're so bloody efficient and smart, you cannot believe it. And they work 80 hours a week. And most of them happen to be men. And why is that? Because there are a small number of insane men who will do nothing but work 80 hours a week. And no matter where you put them, if you put them in the middle of a forest with an axe, all they would do is run around chopping down trees. So the issue isn't why aren't there more women in positions of power? It's why are there any men insane enough ever to occupy those positions? You know, because we also know, and the data on this is very clear, what's the relationship between money and well-being? Once you have enough money to keep the bill collectors from your door, So once you have enough money to stave off misery, which is sort of lower middle class, something like that in our society, maybe a little lower than that, extra money does not help you. It does not improve your life. So why bother with it? Well, that's what the women in the law firms think. It's like most of them, by the time they're in their 30s, are married. Almost all of them are married to men who make as much money or more than they do, because that's what women go for cross-culturally. 4 to 5 years older, equal or higher in the socioeconomic status. So their husbands already make $350,000 a year. It's like they think, well, I don't need much more money. The men use money to keep track of the competition, by the way, because all the male lawyers that I talk to are usually real hard-ass guys, really low in agreeableness, really high.
So I saw this video that was very interesting. Maybe I'll play it here if I find it. But the woman said basically that the only people that care more about rich men are men. So men always position it as though women are hypergamous and all this stuff. But men are more obsessed with rich men than women are. And that's an interesting thing. And why do women then look to these rich men? Well, because all the guys think they're cool. So if the guys are glorifying them, then obviously the women are going to be like, well, oh, then this must be cool. Because technically, based on what he's even saying here, women aren't necessarily interested in rich men. They are interested in men that sort of dominate socially, the most powerful men. And so if all the men who are physically stronger than women are looking to this other man and glorifying this other man and praising him, well then of course all the women are going to look to him. Because if it was a different situation, the richest men in the world, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, you would see so many more women following them and chasing them. And don't get it wrong, I'm sure a lot of women chase them. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, women are more interested in powerful men, and powerful meaning those that are socially on top of the hierarchy. And we saw that with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jeff Bezos, and Jeff Bezos' girlfriend looking and flirting with Leonardo DiCaprio, when she had, at the time, I think at the time he was the richest man in the world before they announced that Elon Musk took his place recently. So it's an interesting concept. Here's another video I'm going to check out.
Women like men who are about 4 years older, who manifest signs of success, as well as being handsome and personable and all of that. The reason for that is that they're looking to equalize the economic disparity that exists because women take a harder hit from sex and pregnancy than men. They're looking for someone who's competent and generous. Competence would be intelligence, general cognitive ability, and the markers that go along with that. They want conscientiousness or openness, as well as other desirable personality traits. So they're looking for someone who can provide. Well, it's not because they're greedy precisely, it's because they're going to put themselves in a more vulnerable position if they have a child. And we know this because even affluent women who have a child by themselves or who get divorced tend to drop down the socioeconomic hierarchy a fair bit, which is of course why alimony payments and all of that are necessary. So this hypergamy means women are much more selective in their mating than men are. And it's not surprising because they pay a bigger price for sex. It's more dangerous for women because they can get pregnant, and it might be more dangerous emotionally.
So that's so interesting there. The idea that like women that are single drop down. And he goes back to this idea of like having children. Women that are single that have children tend to drop down because it costs a lot of money to raise children. And so it's just something that's, you know, it's perspective, something that's quite interesting to think about when it comes to the differences between men and women. So I'm going to finish off with this last video that he posted.
On average, men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. And that's actually the biggest difference we know of psychologically between men and women. And even though men and women are quite similar, all things considered, the extremes make a difference. So you imagine that in order to become an engineer, you have to be extraordinarily interested in things rather than people. Well, most of those people are men. And if you want to become a nurse, well, then you have to be much more interested in people than you are in things. And most of those people are women.
Interesting. Super interesting. Interesting. I mean, on one side, it's interesting that he chose the role of a nurse. But regardless, I understand where he's coming from. You know, it's just at the end of the day, both of these videos, all these videos, just kind of like talk about the differences between men and women in society, and how both. And I think generally, so there's this idea that like there's a problem with each. You know, some women think men are terrible, some men think women are terrible, whatever the case is. And I think that is just an ignorant perspective. We have to understand that like it's a yin and yang. It creates balance. The psychologies of men and women are different. And so the way that we can build a better world is by working together to build a better world. So it's just an interesting thing. He makes great videos, Jordan Peterson. Go check him out. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. My name is Kenim, and see you next time.